Hello there everybody and welcome back to a new video on my channel. I hope you're having an amazing day. Um, Kind of hard, I know, to have such a great day when all you see is news about what's happening in Afghanistan and all that horrible stuff, but you gotta learn to tune it out. Take a break if you need to. It sucks, but nothing we can do. So anyway, today's video is, as I say that, I'm making a video about what's happening, so. Anyway, yeah, so today we are discussing Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter, how their presidencies are similar, and how, um, it's kind of shockingly similar. You always hear the phrase, history repeats itself. Well, I think we have a perfect example of that in Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter. I'm going to start off by taking us back to the mid-early 1970s. So you have Gerald Ford, and you have Nixon getting pardoned, or by Gerald Ford taking over. In the 1976 election, Jimmy Carter wasn't really the most exciting candidate, but a lot of people didn't were upset with the Republicans. They didn't like how Nixon cheated on them, and they were just kind of tired of the Republicans, and they didn't vote for Jimmy Carter necessarily because they thought he was a really good candidate. I mean, some certainly did, but a lot of people just voted for the Democrats because they were upset with Nixon and Gerald Ford, and they just wanted change, and they just wanted someone who, a nice, quiet guy, and a return to normalcy. Sounds pretty similar to what happened today, doesn't it? In 2020 election. I mean, you had Trump. I personally like Trump, and I mean, a lot of people didn't like him, but people voted for Joe Biden as a return to normalcy because they were upset with Trump, and yeah, so it's shockingly similar to Jimmy Carter's election. People weren't necessarily voting for Jimmy Carter because they thought he was a crazy good candidate, but because they wanted a return to normalcy and because they were upset with Nixon and his scandals. I mean, it's kind of similar to Trump and Biden. A lot of people didn't necessarily vote for Biden because they thought it was the best candidate. They voted for Biden because they were tired of Trump's tweets, his rhetoric, all that stuff. So it is shockingly similar, the ways they got elected. And their terms so far have also been shockingly similar. A lot of people know that Jimmy Carter faced an oil crisis early in his term. I mean, let's look back to, I believe it was February, March. You also had an oil crisis that Biden faced when hackers hacked the pipeline that goes through much of the South. People were carrying gas and oil home in grocery bags. It was a disaster. And we did not see much leadership from Biden, just like we didn't see much leadership from Jimmy Carter back in the 70s during that time. So that, and obviously, it took their approval ratings took a little bit of a hit, but still they remain mostly popular. The thing that really brought Jimmy Carter down was the Iranian hostage crisis that started at the end of his term. Um, if you didn't know, it was when the Iranian government today seized power over the former kingdom of Iran, I believe, and they took the American embassy workers hostage, and it was a whole thing where Jimmy Carter tried to get them out. He kept failing miserably, and it's one of the main reasons, along with the economy, that Reagan was elected. If you look at Biden and see what's happening in Afghanistan, um, it's very similar. I mean, you have thousands of Americans and our allies that are pretty much trapped on a runway and an airport, surrounded by the Taliban. And depending on how this goes, we could, God forbid, see something very similar to Jimmy Carter. You could see American soldiers, embassy workers, our allies, whether it be NATO or local Afghan allies, being held hostage. And unless Biden takes executive action and really deals with that, which so far he has not, Biden has completely failed at his job so far in terms of what's happening in Afghanistan. I have no words for how horribly he's failed so far. He has betrayed he's pretty much betrayed our soldiers and our allies and our workers in Afghanistan because he has had no executive action. But that's besides the point. The point, excuse me. um, I think what we need to focus on is just how similar this is. I mean, if God forbid something happened in Afghanistan, which right now, I mean, we really don't know what's going to happen. The runway is currently shut down because local civilians are blocking it. There's shots fired, we've heard. We don't know what could happen. For all we know, the Taliban could just move in there, take thousands of Americans and our European and local allies prisoner, and that would be a complete disaster, and it would completely fall on Biden and his administration. So with that, um, it's shockingly similar to Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter also showed very little executive action in Iran to get the hostages out, and it really hurt him. It's pretty much the reason Reagan won along with a tanking economy, but it was the hostage crisis that pretty much got Reagan over the edge. So with that, we've discussed the similarities between Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter. It's time to do an electoral map on 2024. If 2024 is similar in terms of if history continues to repeat itself and it's similar to 1980. We just cut to the electoral map now. These two candidates are not necessarily my dream candidates, I should say. I mean, this is kind of just. I feel like if we're gonna do a Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Biden, current day kind of scenario, someone besides Trump needs to run because Reagan was kind of someone new, someone different, kind of brought the GOP together, if that makes sense. And I think Ron DeSantis. I could do this with Trump. I just think DeSantis fits the theme better, I guess, in terms of Reagan, Carter, Biden, DeSantis. And I really, Kristi Noem as DeSantis' running mate, just kind of disregard that. I just had to put someone in there because I put Biden Harris. And I figured Kristi Noem would be a safe bet for DeSantis. And not saying I agree with her or like her on all the issues, but I just thought she'd be a safe bet to put in there. So now we are filling in. This is the election of 2024. If Biden's term continues to be like Jimmy Carter's, the economy tanks, which it already kind of has. God forbid something happens in Afghanistan, and Biden's pretty much held responsible by the majority of Americans. So Ron DeSantis will have a bunch of safe states. Obviously, these states will be safe for him. All of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, the Deep South, all the usual states. But he will also add Alaska, which is kind of a typical safe red state. It will pretty much swing heavy to the right. But Texas as well. DeSantis' popularity in the Sun Belt and all that will put him over. But we expect that to help him today. His popularity in the Sun Belt and the both rural and suburban voters. But with Biden being so unpopular in this scenario, Texas will probably swing heavily. It'll probably be maybe 12 to plus 15 for DeSantis, very similar to the 2012-2008 margins. He will also add Ohio and Iowa into his safe column. South Carolina, I forgot to color that in. But yeah, he will add Ohio and Iowa to this into the safe column. Both are states that could be safe in terms of being over 10 in the future. Or in 2024 in general, they could be over 10 for anyone. But with a 1980 similarities, Jimmy Carter in this scenario, they would certainly be safe. Ohio would probably go to DeSantis by about 12, 13, while Iowa would probably go to DeSantis by 14, 15. South Carolina would also probably swing heavily to the right. And so, yeah, we have these states. They would also, in my opinion, DeSantis would win Maine's 2nd district. He would win that pretty handily. He'd probably way outperform Trump, especially because of the scenario. He might already win it by a safe margin in general, but in 2024 if he runs, but he will certainly win it in this scenario. That's not to say that Biden and Kamala won't have some safe states. Obviously, we're so polarized that a 1980 election is very difficult to do in today's world, obviously. So, I mean, you have the West Coast, obviously. Oregon could be under 10, but yeah, rest of these states, no hope. Illinois, if I used 15 margins, would probably be likely. It would probably go to Biden-Harris by 11, 12, but it would still barely be over the safe margin, so for me, so it'd be safe. Looking at the East Coast, Maryland and D.C. are just so far left, nothing would matter. Delaware we'll get back to, New Jersey we'll get back to, Connecticut we'll get back to, Rhode Island we'll get back to, but Massachusetts, Vermont, and New York are just so far left as well that they would probably go to Biden and Harris by safe margins. So with that, we have 189 safe states, or safe electoral votes for Ron DeSantis and 144 for Joe Biden. So with that, we have, not sure what else to say. We're going to go into the likely states. In this scenario, Ron DeSantis would most likely win his home state of Florida by a likely margin in the state of North Carolina. I think he would probably win Florida by about 6, 7 points, maybe even 8 in a crazy good year like this one, maybe 8, 9 points, and probably North Carolina by just over 5, maybe even 6, depending on what happens with the economy and race relations, because that'll be interesting to see how DeSantis deals with that. Anyway, Joe Biden and Kamala would have some likely states as well. Joe Biden would most likely win the state of Oregon by a likely margin, probably by about 8, 9 points. It would be under 10, making it likely, but it really wouldn't be that competitive. But anyway, yeah, Colorado as well. It would be under 10, probably go to Biden by about 6, 7 points. But really, it just moves so far to the left that even in a crazy good Republican year, where Biden has completely failed at his job like he has so far, it still would probably go to Biden by about 5, 6 points. Um, Virginia as well would probably be likely. Like I said, it's probably a lot of all these states would probably swing heavily to the right, but they would still just be they're just so far to the left overall that they would still not really be super competitive, but they would have noticeable swings. Um, the state of New Jersey and Connecticut, I feel like those would probably be likely, probably by about 7, 8 points each. So they would swing to the right, but they wouldn't be the crazy swings. But yeah, they would still swing to the right and probably go to Biden by about 8, 9 points. Um, and I believe that is it for the likely states. Yes. So these are all the likely states, as you can see. Uh, Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem have already pretty much beaten Trump, I believe, or they have the same amount of electoral votes as Trump as we head into the lean states. This is where it gets interesting. Ron DeSantis in this scenario would win Nevada and Arizona by lean margins, probably by about 4 points in Arizona, about 2 or 3 in Nevada. Um, trends already trends already show that Nevada could be red in 2024 no matter what, but Arizona is pretty much a swing state that I think DeSantis would win Arizona against Biden anyway, but with these scenarios, it'd probably go to him by about 4 or 5 points. Um, DeSantis would also win in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, putting him over 270, but we're still gonna fill out the map. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are states that I feel like would be the most competitive, anyways. But if Biden completely fails at his job, he'll likely lose all of, if not all of his support in Pennsylvania, the white working class support in Pennsylvania. Michigan, he'll probably lose a lot of support in the Detroit suburbs and Grand Rapids, the working class parts of Michigan. And Wisconsin was probably going to go red anyways. So I'd say Wisconsin would probably go to DeSantis by about just under 5. Wisconsin could actually be likely. Going to keep it lean, but it could be likely. Michigan would probably be lean, go to DeSantis by about 3, 4 points. Pennsylvania would probably be similar to Wisconsin, but maybe a half a point to the left. So with that, we have Biden's lean states. Biden would win New Mexico and Maine's first district, both by lean margins. Um, Not much else to say except these places would swing heavily to the right, but they would still narrowly go to not go to Biden, just because they're just like similar to the other places. They're so safe. Red. I did forget to color in a likely place, and that would be Nebraska's second district. The suburbs would likely swing heavily to the right, as well as just the whole country in this scenario would go to the right. And with it probably being gerrymandered already, it'd probably be likely for DeSantis, if not safe. Um, Looking at we do have another lean state. Yeah, that is the state of Georgia. Um, Ron DeSantis would probably have a decent shot at winning back Georgia in 2024 already, but after that, it's probably gone. It's probably gone for the GOP. But in a scenario like this, where Biden has completely failed, he's lost a lot of his support. Georgia would probably go to DeSantis by about 4 or 5 points, instead of the maybe half a point that he would win it by in 2024. And with Georgia probably also still be competitive in 2028 and 2032. But let's move on. I think there would still be some tilt states, and they would include the state of Minnesota. Would tilt to Ron DeSantis in this scenario, just because I mean, look at DeSantis. I mean, in this scenario, Minnesota's white working class workers in the Iron Range would probably swing heavily to DeSantis. The suburbs would swing to DeSantis. The rural areas would swing to DeSantis. And the inner city vote would not turn out, as a lot of them would probably be disillusioned with Joe Biden at this point, as even the mainstream media is now attacking him. New Hampshire would also tilt to DeSantis because, one, it already hates incumbents. Two, Biden's failed foreign policy. Overseas, there's a lot of libertarian types. They would certainly swing to DeSantis. And with that, New Hampshire would probably tilt to Ron DeSantis, as well as Maine at large would tilt to Ron DeSantis, just because, like I said, this is a scenario where Biden completely fails at his job, which he kind of has already. and the country just kind of goes against the Democrats. A lot of people don't know this, but Hillary Clinton only won mid-large by 4 points in 2016, and I mean, 4 points in 2016. It's not the best margin. Biden did swing it back, but still 4 points in 2016. So in a complete red wave year, like this would be a complete just slaughter, similar to 1980. Not as bad as 1984, but still similar to 1980. Main at large would certainly go into the Republican column. Now I do think Joe Biden would narrowly win his home state of Delaware, just because it is his home state. It would tilt to him, probably go to him by about half a point. I made a video on Delaware being a future swing state. This scenario would make it very competitive, as Biden would probably not be super popular in the state, but still he would get some support. Looking at the state of Rhode Island, I do think that it would also tilt to Joe Biden. Um, I think that it'd be a tough one to flip for DeSantis, but I'm sure he would hold rallies there in a scenario like this and really fight for it. But it did, but still, I think Delaware is more likely to flip red than Rhode Island as of now. And the fact that Biden would still be semi-popular among Democrats and neocons, and not neocons, neolibs, I do think he would narrowly win Rhode Island. But yeah, that is the map. This is the map if Biden's pretty much approval rating continues to tank, and if something horrible happens overseas in Afghanistan, and yeah, not much else to say. But here is the map. Let me know what you agree with and disagree with. Pray for everyone in Afghanistan, and thank you for watching.